Good morning, sir.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Screen is visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So I start after 2-3 minutes. Let everybody join. Start हो रहा है? हाँ, no, no. So good morning. The topic of my discussion today is inner product spaces. Of course, I had to start quadratic forms, but because I require some concept from inner product spaces, so I thought it proper to first rebrush this inner product space, and then I will take up that particular topic. Now, if you just look up the definition of vectors in physical sense, what a vector is. It is an entity which has got direction, which has got angle, and at the same time, it satisfies the parallelogram law. So when three conditions are satisfied, then we say that that particular entity is nothing but a vector. When we are introduced the concept of vector spaces, we just defined that any element of a vector space is called a vector. But if you look up that particular definition, the other two things they were missing. There was no concept of magnitude, there was no concept of direction, and of course that satisfied the parallelogram law. Now, in order to make this definition of vectors more realistic, then something more was to be done. And for that, we introduced two scalar valued functions on vector spaces. One is known as the inner product, the other is known as norm. Now, what is an inner product? Inner product, first of all, let me just make it clear that all vector spaces which we are going to discuss here, they are either on real numbers or on complex numbers. We are not going to take any general field. Okay, the field is always going to be either the field of real numbers or the field of complex numbers. So first of all, let me define what is meant by an inner product. Inner product is basically a function which is defined from V cross V into field F, where F is the field of real numbers or complex numbers, remember. And this function is such that it satisfies the following three conditions. The first is for all UV in V, inner product I am going to define by braces. Okay, UV parenthesis, UV equal to VU conjugate. Okay, this bar denotes the conjugate or complex number complex conjugate of number UV, because we are considering F to be either field of complex numbers or field of real numbers. When it is a field of complex number, then this becomes a meaningful statement that UV is equal to VU complex conjugate. Okay, and second is the linearity property, that is A for all UVW in V and AB in F. AU plus BV of W is nothing but A of UW plus B of VW. And third is the non-negativity condition, because of course when I say UU is greater than or equal to 0, okay, it means automatically it is a real number, because in complex numbers you cannot define any order relation. Okay, so this is going to be a real number, and what it says, it is going to be always greater than or equal to 0. But whenever it is 0, so either you must imply to be equal to 0. So when these three conditions are satisfied, then this function is said to be an inner product on V. Remember, we are assuming that V is a vector space. Okay, this is the additional condition we are going to define on V, that is of inner product. So because on a vector space we have defined inner product, so it becomes meaningful to talk of an inner product space, that is, it is a vector space on which an inner product is defined. So inner product space is nothing but a vector space over which some inner product has been defined. I am not going to discuss examples as well, because they are all element examples and you can just look up your books. Okay, plenty of examples are there. I just want to brush up only various concepts involved in inner product spaces. Now we come across two type of inner product spaces. One is known as the Euclidean space. The other is known as the United space. Under Euclidean space, the field to be considered is always field of real numbers. Okay, if V is an inner product space which is defined on the field of real numbers, that space is called a Euclidean space. And any inner product space which is defined on the field of complex numbers, okay, that is called a unitary space. So these two terms normally we use while discussing various theorems, etc. So my problem was, can we associate the concept of magnitude or length with any vector? The answer is yes. And for that, we are going to define another function that is called the norm function. Norm function, it is defined from a vector space into, again, set of real numbers, because norm is always a real number. So I denote this by two parallel lines. So now if u is any vector v, then we define norm of u to be the square root of inner product of u with u. Okay, first I define the concept of inner product, then I am going to make use of this inner product by just considering square root of uu. And of course, I can even put this is always real number, so it is not, the square root is quite meaningful. Okay, so norm of u is defined to be square root of inner product of u with itself. Okay, and from here, because inner product of u with itself is always going to be greater than or equal to 0, that is, it is always a non-negative real number. Therefore, this norm of u is always greater than or equal to 0. Okay, and if u happens to be, this u happens to be a 0 vector, then it is always going to be 0. Okay, further, this norm function defines these two additional conditions also, namely, for any scalar a, norm of au is nothing but mod of a times norm of u, because it is always going to be greater than or equal to 0. So I have to put a mod of a, so that it remains positive. Okay, and second condition is norm of sum of two vectors is always going to be less than or equal to sum of the norms of these two vectors. That is, norm of u plus v is always going to be less than or equal to norm u plus norm v. So with the help of this inner product, we have been able to define the concept of length or norm of a vector. So that way we have been able to introduce the concept of magnitude of a vector. Okay, so that problem that we have not associated the concept of length or magnitude to any vector, that has been overcome with the help of introduction with the inner product. Okay, but still we are far away from defining the concept of angle between two vectors. Okay, so we have seen what is an inner product space, and any inner product space together with the concept of norm, that is known as a normed linear space. That is known as, those who have studied functional analysis, they already know what is a normed linear space. It is always vector space on which the norm function has been defined. And then we come across what is known as what is unit vector. We say a vector is a unit vector provided its norm is 1. Provided its norm is 1. Then in non-linear spaces, we have got a very important inequality known as Schwarz inequality. He says that if V is any inner product space, and if U and V are any two vectors in V, then mod of norm of, mod of inner product of UV is always less than or equal to norm U times norm V. Okay, this is always less than equal to. But if these vectors, the question is under what condition this inequality could be reduced to equality. And the condition is that if U is a linear combination or are linearly dependent, if U and V are linearly dependent, then we always have got the equality. That is mod of norm of UV is nothing but norm of U times norm of V. Now, with the help of this, even we can define the concept of distance between two vectors. Okay, distance between two vectors. And those who have studied topology, especially metric spaces, they will appreciate that how can we define this particular function. So we define the distance between any two vectors. Okay, that is, we are going to define the concept of metric for inner product spaces. So suppose U and V are any two vectors, then by D of UV, we define the different distance between U and V, and we denote it by norm of U minus V. And basically, I am going to take this as the definition. Okay, concept of norm is there. So this particular function is well defined that way. So D of V is nothing but norm of U minus V. Then it can be seen that this function D satisfies these conditions. Namely, D of UV is always greater than or equal to 0, and D of UV equal to 0 provided U is equal to V. And secondly, D of UV is nothing but D of VU, that is, it is symmetric condition. And third is triangle inequality. That shows that D of UV is always less than equal to D of UW plus D of WV, where the W belongs to V. And fourth is D of UV is equal to D of U plus W, V plus W. It simply means that under translation, this distance remains invariant. Okay, this is the additional property, and those who have studied measure theory, they have come across that when we introduce the concept of measure there, measure is always translation invariant. That is, it is a property of translation invariant. That is, if I just translate U by W and accordingly V also by W, then the distance between U and V is the same as distance between U plus W and
हेलो हेलो सुनील सर।
हाँ जी, मुझे लग रहा है सर का कनेक्शन लॉस्ट हो गया है।
अच्छा अच्छा।
हाँ, अभी ज्वाइन नहीं किया सर ने दोबारा से।
हाँ जी, स्टार्ट आउट कर रहा हूँ मैं। ठीक है, हाँ स्टार्ट कर रहा हूँ। हेलो I'm sorry, there was a disruption in electricity, so I got disconnected.
No problem, sir.
We have
Okay, sir,
already
no problem,
seen
sir.
the concept of magnitude attached to a vector. Now we are going to discuss the angle between two vectors. Here the angle are very special. We are not talking about the arbitrary angle. Of course, later we will discuss it. How can we find angle between any two vectors? But basically, we are going to consider only the orthogonality part. That is when two vectors are at 90 degrees to each other. So the definition says that if V is any inner product space, and if U and V are any two vectors, then U will be orthogonal to V, or equivalently V will be orthogonal to U, provided their inner product is 0. If the inner product of any two vectors is 0, then we say that those two vectors are orthogonal to each other. They are orthogonal to each other. And with the help of this concept, we are going to define a concept called orthogonal complement. That is, if VF is any inner product space, and if WF is a subspace of VF, then we are going to define the orthogonal complement of W. We denote this by WF per or W per. We can ignore F also, because we are just assume that F is the field of real or complex numbers. So it simply shows that W is also over F. So W per is defined. It is the set of all vectors U in V, such that the inner product of U with W equal to 0 for all W in WF. Okay, then this W per is also a subspace of VF. Now we already know that every finite dimensional vector space has got a base. Okay, now with the help of this base, we will show something more, that every inner product space is going to have every finite dimensional product space is going to have a base which consists of a special type of sets. Okay, now what could be those special type of sets we are going to define? First, we define what is meant by orthogonal set. We have already seen orthogonality of two numbers. Now, what is orthogonal set? That is, if S is a subset of an inner product space V, then we say that this set S is orthogonal, provided the elements of S are pairwise orthogonal. That is, if U and V are two elements of S, then their inner product is always 0. So we say a set S is orthogonal set, provided its elements are pairwise orthogonal. Okay, and then close on the heels of this concept, we have got another concept that is known as orthonormal set. If we are given an orthogonal set, from here we can either construct or define the concept of orthonormal set. The only difference between orthogonal set and orthonormal set is that it is, first of all, an orthogonal set. Every orthonormal set is an orthogonal set, and norm of each vector in this particular set is 1. Okay, that is a collection of vectors whose norms are 1 and which are at the same time pairwise orthogonal. That is known as orthonormal set. Okay, so two conditions: S is an orthogonal set and norm of each element of S is 1. So such a set is said to be an orthonormal set. Then what is meant by an orthonormal base? That is a basis of a vector space which is at the same time an orthonormal set. is called an orthonormal basis. Okay. In other words, if we say that if V F is a finite dimensional vector space, then a set S U1, U2, Un is an orthonormal that I have set or is called a basis for this if S is linearly independent and every vector V is nothing but a linear combination of these vectors. Now I am going to just write something more over this. That is, if V is any vector in V, then certainly I can write V as a linear combination in the form A1 U1 plus A2 U2 plus A and Un, where A1, A2, An, they are nothing but scalars. But these scalars can be so chosen that AI is nothing but V of inner product of V with each UI. Provided this is an orthonormal set. Okay, so this is very special type of representation. I can always make this and I will use it while I construct an orthonormal base from a given base. Okay, and after that we define what is meant by a complete orthonormal set. Complete orthonormal set, this is the largest orthonormal set, that there doesn't exist any orthonormal set which is bigger than the given orthonormal set. Then such a set, such an orthonormal set is said to be a complete orthonormal set. Okay, so an orthonormal set is said to be complete if it is not contained in any larger orthonormal set. That is, it is the largest orthonormal set. Okay, and then we have got orthogonal dimension of a definite dimensional vector space. Definitely finite dimensional vector space. So definition, the orthogonal dimension of a finite dimensional vector space is defined as the largest number of vectors in an orthonormal set. That is, it is of the maximum dimension. It is of the maximum dimension that is called a orthogonal dimension of finite dimensional vector space. Now earlier we had Schwarz inequality. There is another inequality that is known as Bessel's inequality. And it says that if U1, U2, Un is any finite orthonormal set in an inner product space V, and if V is any vector in V, then we have got summation I is equal to 1 to n mod of inner product of V with Ui is less than or equal to norm of the square of norm of V. Okay, and again, when the equality is going to hold if and only V is, if this V belongs to the space generated by U1, U2, Un, then you are going to have equality here. Then you are going to have equality here. Otherwise, you have got strict inequality. After that, I have just cut short so many things because I am more interested in this particular theorem, okay, which I am going to even discuss in detail, and I will illustrate it how to apply this because I shall be needing this portion in my subsequent discussion, even in quadratic forms also. So we have, as I told you, every finite dimensional vector space has got a base. Okay, but if we are given a finite dimension inner product space, then it always has an orthonormal base. It has an orthonormal base. So in order to get orthonormal base, there is a definite process if we are given a set of vectors, how to construct orthonormal set from that, such that that turns out to be linear independent and at the same time it satisfies the basis condition. That process that is known as Gram-Schmidt orthogonalization process. Okay, so the theorem says that every finite dimensional inner product space has an orthonormal base. That is, now my starting point will be that I shall start with a base, any base. It may be orthonormal base, it may not be orthonormal base. If it is orthonormal base, then I have nothing to do. If it is not, then with the help of that process, I am going to construct the orthonormal base. So suppose V is a finite dimensional inner product space and let dimension of V be n. And suppose B is equal to beta 1, beta 2, beta n is a basis of V. Okay? They are just elements of V. They may not be orthogonal and also not orthonormal. Okay, it is any basis for V. So now we shall construct an orthonormal set. So V1 consisting of vectors say alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha n of n distinct vectors by means of construction called Gram-Schmidt orthogonalization process. That is, this set V1 is going to be orthonormal set. Okay. Now, the idea behind this construction is that each alpha j will be in the linear span of beta 1, beta 2, beta j. That is, we shall first construct an orthonormal set and then normalize each alpha to obtain the orthonormal set that is required. Okay. Now, because beta 1, beta 2, beta n, they form a base. So each of this set is linearly independent. And if the set is linear independent, no element of this base can be zero, as you know, because any set which contains zero is always linearly dependent. So none of the element of the base is zero. So I start with the first element, beta 1. So we have beta 1 to be non-zero. So what I will do, if it is of norm 1, then I can proceed as such. But if it is not of norm 1, I will consider another vector whose norm is going to be 1. So so what I do, I start considering, suppose alpha 1 is equal to beta 1. Okay, alpha 1 is equal to beta 1. And then what I will do, let me consider alpha 1 to be equal to beta 1 upon, because beta 1 may not be norm 1. So I will make it as a vector norm 1. So what I will do, I will divide beta 1 by its norm. So I just consider alpha 1 to be equal to beta 1 upon norm of beta 1. Okay, alpha 1 to be beta 1 upon norm of beta 1. So if you just look up the inner product of alpha 1 with itself, you get this. And because norm of beta 1 is nothing but a scalar, so I can take it out. So it becomes beta 1 inner product with divided by norm of beta 1 square. But beta 1 is nothing but norm of beta 1 square. So this is 1. So the way I have constructed alpha 1, it turns out to be of norm 1. So this is my starting point. So if the given first element of the base is not of norm 1, by this process, I can just convert the first element in new set to be of norm 1. So first of all, I have considered alpha 1 to be equal to beta 1. Alpha 1, I try to identify alpha 1 with beta 1. But in order to make it of norm 1, I have just divided this beta 1 by its norm so that I get norm of alpha 1 to be equal to 1. So thus we have constructed an orthonormal set alpha 1 containing just one vector. Okay. And also alpha 1 is in the linear span of V because why? Because alpha 1 is written as a linear combination of elements of beta. Now I define another vector, namely I just denote this by gamma 2 to be equal to beta 2 minus beta 2 alpha 1 alpha 1. That is, I have considered beta 2 minus the inner product of alpha 1 which I have constructed above with beta 2 and then alpha 1. Now this construction is very, very important. You have to remember it, because when we consider the practical problem, then we are going to make use of this fact. Okay. Then gamma 2, first of all, is it orthogonal to alpha 1? Let me just consider its inner product. Let me just consider its inner product. So if I just consider with its inner product with alpha 1, so gamma 2 of alpha 1 equals, by linearity property, inner product of beta 2 with alpha 1 minus beta 2 alpha 1 inner product and then alpha 1 norm. But because, inner product of alpha 1 with alpha 1. Because alpha 1 is of norm 1, so it will be 1. So they will cancel. So what you get? This expression to be equal to 0. So therefore, this shows that gamma 2 is orthogonal to alpha 1. Okay. So he says if gamma 2 equal to 0, then beta 2 is a scalar multiple of this. Okay. A scalar multiple of alpha 1. But alpha 1 is what? Beta 1. That is, beta 2 becomes a scalar multiple of beta 1. But beta 1 and beta 2 are what? They are linearly independent. So it is not possible. So therefore, gamma 2 cannot be 0. Okay. Gamma 2 cannot be 0. So hence gamma 2 is always different from 0. So now I put alpha 2 to be gamma 2 upon norm of gamma 2, because this gamma 2, it may not be of norm 1. It is of course a vector, but it may not be of norm 1. So to make it of norm 1, I just divide this by norm of gamma 2. So let me denote this by alpha 2 as gamma 2 upon norm of gamma 2. Then obviously this alpha 2 is a scalar multiple of gamma 2, which is orthogonal to alpha 1. Okay, gamma 2 is orthogonal to alpha 1, and because alpha 2 is a scalar multiple of gamma 2, therefore alpha 2 is also orthogonal to alpha 1. Okay, otherwise alpha 2 will become a scalar multiple of alpha 1. Okay, so thus alpha 1, alpha 2 is an orthonormal set containing two distinct vectors, such that alpha 1 is in the linear span of beta 1 as well as alpha 2 is in the linear span of beta 1, beta 2. Okay. So alpha 2, I have constructed a vector which is orthogonal to alpha 1, and norm of alpha 1 is 1, norm of alpha 2 is 1, and at the same time this alpha 2 lies in the linear span of beta 1, beta 2, so it doesn't move out of the vector space. Now I am going to apply the induction hypothesis. So assume that alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha k have been defined in such a way that alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha k is an orthogonal set of non-zero vectors, and each alpha I is a linear combination of beta 1, beta 2, beta I. So we have just assumed what we have been saying above, that now we have just assumed. So with the help of this, now I am going to construct vector gamma of k plus 1. And my construction, you can just copy down the construction. What I started here, gamma 2 I wrote, I started with beta 2 minus, then I consider inner product with alpha 1, then alpha 2, etc. I will do. Just I will copy the construction here. So gamma of k plus 1, this is nothing but beta of k plus 1 minus inner product of beta of k plus 1 alpha 1 with alpha 1, then beta of k plus 1 alpha 2 and minus beta of k plus 1 alpha k. Okay, then again I will just mention that it can be seen that this gamma k plus 1 is orthogonal to alpha 1, it is orthogonal to alpha 2, it is orthogonal to alpha k, and also gamma of k plus 1 is different from 0, it cannot be 0. It cannot be 0. So this gamma k plus 1 is a vector which is orthogonal to alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha of k. So now I define alpha of k plus 1. Okay. So hence gamma k plus 1 is orthogonal to each of the vectors alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha k. And again, if I put this to be equal to 0, you will see that beta k plus 1 turns out to be a linear combination of alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha k, that is a linear combination of beta 1, beta 2, beta k. But since they are independent, therefore it is not possible. So gamma of k plus 1 cannot be 0. Okay, then I define alpha of k plus 1 to be equal to gamma of k plus 1 upon norm of gamma of k plus 1. Then norm of alpha k plus 1 is nothing but 1. And alpha k plus 1 is orthogonal to each of the vectors alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha k. Okay, and at the same time, alpha k plus 1 is different from all the previous vectors alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha k. Okay, again, otherwise you will arrive at a contradiction. So therefore, by induction hypothesis, corresponding to each k, we have been able to define a vector alpha k. So alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha n is an orthonormal basis of V because this set is orthogonal, orthogonal as well as norm of this vector is going to be 1, and each alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha n can be written as a linear combination of basis vector beta 1, beta 2, beta, so they form a base for V. So by this process, we have seen that if you are given any base for an inner product space, then from that base, we can always construct another base, which is nothing but orthonormal base. So what I have done, let me just illustrate it so that you can use it while solving problems. Okay. Now remember, inner product is for real numbers. Or inner product for real numbers is basically the dot product that you have to keep in mind. Okay, that is if you are considering Rn and suppose x is equal to x1, x2, xn n tuple and y is equal to y1, y2, yn another n tuple. There are two elements of this. Then the inner product of x with y is defined to be equal to x1, y1 plus x2, y2 plus x3, y3. That is, you not treated them as a vector space. It is nothing but the dot product between these two vectors. Okay, so I am going to make use of this fact while solving this particular problem. So you are given these three vectors in R3. So obviously these vectors are not orthonormal. They don't form orthonormal set because none of them is of norm 1. Okay, first of all, and they are not pairwise orthogonal also. So if we are given this base, then we are going to construct a normal orthonormal base from this. You might have done, but just to refresh it, because I shall be using it in quadratic forms. So let me just assume that beta 1 denote 2 minus 1 was 0. Beta 2 denote just a representation. Okay, beta 1, beta 2, beta 2. So I construct what is alpha 1. Alpha 1 to be equal to beta 1 upon norm of beta 1. Okay. Now, beta 1 is 2 minus 1, 0. And what is norm of beta 1? It is nothing but the square root of inner product of beta 1 with beta 1. Okay. That is, you have to consider inner product of 2 minus 1, 0 with 2 minus 1, 0. And inner product, as I told you, in case of real numbers, it is nothing but the dot product of these two. So it is nothing 2 square plus minus 1 square plus 0 square. That is square root of 5. So what you get, beta 1 to beta 1 upon norm of beta 1 as 2 minus 1, 0 upon root 5. Okay. And you know that if you are given a scalar multiple of any n tuple, then each tuple is multiplied by this scalar. So this turns out to be 2 upon root 5, then minus 1 upon root 5 and 0. Okay, 0 upon root 5 means 0. So what you get alpha 1 to be equal to 2 upon root 5 minus 1 upon root 5 and so, and you can easily see that the norm of alpha 1 is nothing but 1. Because if you consider a square plus this square, this turns out to be equal to 1. Next, as I did in the theorem, I define what is gamma 2. Gamma 2 is nothing but beta 2 minus inner product of beta 2 with alpha 1 times alpha 1. Okay. Now let me just calculate what is beta 2 alpha 1. Beta 2 is my this vector 1, 0, minus 1. And alpha 1 is my this vector. So I have to consider the inner product of this vector with this vector. Okay. That I have written here 1, 0, minus 1 and 2 upon root 5 minus 1 upon root 5 and 0. So if I just consider their inner product, 1 times this plus 0 times this plus minus 1 times this. So you get 1 into 2 upon root 5. So ultimately you get 2 upon root 5. This is what you get. And therefore, now this particular term, beta 2 alpha 1 of alpha 1, this turns out to be, now this is nothing but a scalar. Okay, this is scalar multiple of alpha 1. So 2 upon root 5 into alpha 1 is nothing but 2 upon root 5 minus 1 upon root 5 and 0. So this turns out to be 2 upon 5 because I can take root 5 out. So 2 upon 5, inside you get 2 minus 1, 0. Okay, this is what you get this particular term. And now I am going to subtract this from beta 2. Okay, so therefore, gamma 2 turns out to be 1 upon 5, 2 upon 5, and minus 1. Okay, this is the vector you are going to get. But remember, gamma 2 is a vector, its norm is not 1. So okay, its norm turns out to be 6 upon 5. Okay, so what I am going to do, I will define alpha 2 to be gamma 2 upon norm of gamma 2. That is, you get this particular vector, 1 upon root 30, 2 upon root 30, and minus 5 upon root 30. Okay, and you can check that norm of this particular alpha 2 is nothing but 1. And at the same time, this alpha 2 and alpha 1, they are orthogonal also to each other. So that way, we have been able to construct two vectors, alpha 1 and alpha 2, which are pairwise orthogonal. At this end, each is of norm 1. So now I define what is gamma 3. Gamma 3 is nothing but beta 3 minus beta 3 alpha 1 minus beta alpha 2 alpha 2. This should be my expression. So from there, I am going to calculate what is beta 3 alpha 1 first. So beta 3 as before, it is nothing but the dot product of these two vectors. Okay, this and this, and it turns out to be -1 upon √5. And then beta 3 alpha 1, I calculate, and it turns out to be -1 upon 5, 2 minus 1, 0. Likewise, I have calculated beta 3 alpha 2, which turns out to be this, and from there I have calculated. So I get gamma 3 as beta 3 minus beta 3 alpha 1 minus beta 3. It should be alpha 2. There is a mistake. It should be alpha 2. So you just substitute these values here, and ultimately you will end up by writing gamma 3 to be 8/3, 16/3, 8/3. I hope it is clear. Or is there any doubt? So gamma 3 is this one, and I just write down what is the norm of this. Norm of this means take the inner product of this vector with itself, and it turns out to be 8√6/3. So now you define alpha 3 to be gamma 3 upon norm of gamma 3, and this is nothing but 8/3, 16/3, 8/3 upon this, and this turns out to be this. So that way you have got these three vectors alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3, which are nothing but this, and this. And we have already seen that alpha 1 is orthogonal to alpha 2, alpha 1 is orthogonal to alpha 3, alpha 2 is orthogonal to alpha 3. So alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3, they are nothing but, it is an orthogonal set. And because it is, each vector of this set is of norm 1, so it is an orthonormal set. And because alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3, they are nothing but linear combinations of beta 1, beta 2, beta 3 also. So therefore, they are going to form a basis of the vector space R3. So therefore, from a non-orthonormal base of a vector space, we have been able to construct an orthonormal basis. So it's a very important construction, and it is used in many applications, okay? Especially when you consider optimization theory or image processing, there it is used. So this was just, I thought it proper to refresh in a product space. Moreover, it is mentioned in your syllabi also. So I have not gone into the much details of this topic, and I have just brushed only salient features of inner product spaces. And because when we are going to consider quadratic forms, okay, I will just mention what is a quadratic form, and can it be brought to a canonical form. I will just mention what is canonical form. That is expression having only square terms of the given variables. Okay, there we are going to use orthogonal transformation. With the help of this, that we are going to convert any quadratic form to a canonical form. Okay, so let me just see. First of all, what is a quadratic form? Okay, so basically quadratic form, this is also a function. Quadratic form, this is also a function. And how it is defined? Basically, it is defined on set of matrices. That is, if x1, x2, xn, these are variables. So a homogeneous.
सर एक चीज पूछनी है यहाँ पर, जैसे सर वो हमने पीछे अभी ऑर्थो नॉर्मलाइजेशन करा है, तो
हाँ,
सर वो
हाँ।
जो नॉर्मल कर रहे हैं हैंड टू हैंड वेक्टर्स को, वो काम सर यदि हम बाद में कर लें सबसे लास्ट में, तो भी वो ठीक कैलकुलेशन देगा ना सर?
नहीं, वो बीच में गड़बड़ वहां कर देगा जब आप गामा 2 गामा 3 कर रहे हो ना, वहां ऑलरेडी हम ऑर्थोगोनलाइजेशन कर रहे हैं उसकी यूज उसका अल्फा
यदि सर
1 को जो है ना, हम
यदि
उसको
सर हमारे पास
नॉर्मल मान के
कोड
चल
हो,
रहे हैं। अगर
यदि
बाद
सर
में करोगे, बाद
जी
में करोगे तो अननेसेसरी कैलकुलेशन जो है ना मेन टाइम क्लमसी बन जाएंगे।
नहीं सर, यदि हम एक ऑर्थोगोनल बेसिस निकाल लें और
हाँ,
फिर उस ऑर्थोगोनल बेसिस के वेक्टर्स को यूनिट वेक्टर्स बना दे, तो वो ऑर्थोनॉर्मल हो जाएगी सर।
हाँ, वैसे वो भी कर लोगे, वो भी कर सकते हो, ठीक है ना,
तो
लेकिन
सर
वहाँ हैंड टू हैंड आपको जो है ना ऑर्थो नॉर्मल मिल रहा है, वहाँ हैंड टू हैंड मिल रहा है,
जी, जी, ओके सर, ओके।
ठीक है ना।
जी,
वहाँ भी
जी,
वो फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी इज ऑलवेज देयर, क्योंकि बेसिकली ऑर्थोगोनल सेट अगर है आपके पास तो ऑर्थो नॉर्मल तो उनके नॉर्म से डिवाइड करना है ना, और तो कुछ करना ही नहीं हमको, ठीक है ना। हाँ,
ओके,
वो भी कर सकते हो, ऐसी कोई दिक्कत की बात नहीं है, कर
ठीक
सकते
है।
हो,
जी,
ठीक है।
थैंक यू
तो
सर।
तो बंद कर दें आज, हैं?
जी?
आज यही खत्म करें, क्वाड्रेटिक फॉर्म
हाँ जी
स्टार्ट करें।
सर, नेक्स्ट सेशन में हम क्वाड्रेटिक फॉर्म स्टार्ट कर लेंगे सर।
चलिए नेक्स्ट टाइम कर लेते हैं। तो
जी,
मे बी आई रिक्वायर 1 और 2 मोर लेक्चर्स, जिससे ज्यादा नहीं चाहिए, ठीक है।
ओके सर, ओके।
टेस्ट
जी
अब
सर।
आपका एग्जाम कब हो रहा है कुछ पता है?
सर फैब में होने वाले हैं सर एग्जाम तो, मोस्ट
टाइम में होंगे?
प्रोबेबली। जी।
चलो
सर
अच्छा
एक रिक्वेस्ट है सर, यदि हमें सर कुछ एक क्वेश्चंस का आइडिया मिल जाए सर कि हमें किस तरह के क्वेश्चंस वहाँ पे करने होंगे, तो सर ये हमारे लिए एक बहुत ज्यादा हेल्पफुल हो जाएगा।
नहीं, देखो क्वेश्चन तो ये है ना कि अब ये डिपेंड करता है कि वेटेज कितना है, कि कितना क्वेश्चन आएंगे, कितना वेटेज है, क्योंकि अब देखो, अब देखो, सपोज आई आस्क यू टू फाइंड द ऑर्थोनॉर्मल सेट, अब ये इट इज टाइम कंज्यूमिंग, तुमको बहुत प्रैक्टिस करनी पड़ेगी,
हाँ जी
समझ
सर।
गए ना।
जी,
क्वाड्रेटिक फॉर्म को जब हम उसमें करते हैं, कैनोनिकल फॉर्म में कन्वर्ट करेंगे, वो उसके
जी,
अंदर भी बहुत लेंथी प्रोसेस है,
हाँ जी, हाँ जी।
तो उसकी एक अच्छी प्रैक्टिस करनी पड़ेगी, क्योंकि अगर वो बड़े क्वेश्चन दे दिए तो हमारे पास लीनियर प्रोग्रामिंग के ऑलरेडी बड़े लंबे क्वेश्चन होते हैं,
जी, जी,
और 3 घंटे का सिर्फ टाइम होता है।
हाँ
तो
जी सर।
दैट आई विल आस्क के भाई किस टाइप के क्वेश्चन जो है ना, शुड वी गो फॉर ऑब्जेक्टिव टाइप या स्मॉल आंसर टाइप क्वेश्चन, किस टाइप के क्वेश्चन चाहिए, समझ गए
ओके
ना?
सर, ओके,
तो आई
ठीक है।
आई डोंट नो कि हम बहुत ज्यादा ये इस टाइप के न्यूमेरिकल प्रॉब्लम दे सकते हैं, क्योंकि
जी,
3 ही घंटे का टाइम है, और आई
जी
डोंट नो
सर,
5 या 6 क्वेश्चन करने होंगे तुमको,
जी सर, जी,
ठीक है ना। उसके
जी,
अंदर पास होना, नंबर लाने जरूरी है, क्योंकि उसके अंदर पास फेल तो होता नहीं हमारे
हाँ
यहाँ,
जी, हाँ जी, जी सर, जी।
ठीक है ना। तो
ओके सर,
दैट आई विल आस्क के उनका मॉडल क्या उसके हिसाब से जो है ना, देन आई लेट यू नो कि क्वेश्चन कैसे करने हैं,
ओके सर, ओके, ठीक है सर, थैंक यू सर।
क्योंकि मैं तुम्हें क्वेश्चन दे दूं उसके बाद जो है ना पता लगे इररिलेवेंट है, कोई पॉइंट
नहीं
नहीं
सर,
है।
आज एक हम आपको पेपर सेंड कर देंगे सर, जो लास्ट ईयर हुआ था, तो
हम्म।
सर उसमें मतलब जैसा भी होगा सर, उससे थोड़ा
वैसे
सा आइडिया।
अगर होगा तो मुझे भेज देना।
जी सर,
वैसे
जी,
लास्ट का तो हो चुका पेपर मैंने ही बनाया हो, मुझे ध्यान नहीं है।
ओके सर, ओके, जी, जी,
हाँ, आई एम नॉट श्योर,
ओके सर,
ठीक है, ओके।
थैंक यू सर।
अच्छा फिर, थैंक यू वेरी मच,
Thank you, sir.
थैंक
Thank
यू,
you.
थैंक यू,
Thank
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
थैंक यू,
Thank you, sir.
थैंक यू।
Sir.